Now, Parshas Seitzei is one of the three parshas of the Torah. You have Parshas Mishpatim in the book of Shmos. You have Parshas Kedoshim in the book of Vayikra. And then you have Parshas Seitzei, which are the three parshas that contain the most practical mitzvahs in them. I'm not sure which one has the most, but it's one mitzvah after another mitzvah. What's unique about Parshas Seitzei is it starts off and it has some very, very difficult to understand mitzvahs, and mitzvahs that we really need to get clarity on what the Torah really wants here, or what the Torah is telling us. So on page 1046, Seitzei la milchama aloivecha, when you go out to war against your enemy, and Hashem biyadecha, and Hashem delivers in your hand, v'shavisa shivyo, and you take captives. So you're going to go out to war. Let's read a few psukim. V'reisa b'shivya eshes yifas toar, you see a beautiful woman, v'chashakta ba, you desire her, v'lakachta l'chalisha, you take her as a wife. Now we're talking about a non-Jewish woman. Jewish men are going to war, and you can take a non-Jewish woman. So what do? V'avesel toch beisecha, you bring her into your house. V'gilcha es rosha, she shaves her head. V'asasa es tzipor neha, she does her fingernails. According to some, it means she cuts her fingernails. According to some, she grows them long and lets them grow. Whichever one will make her less attractive. V'hesiras es simla shivya me'aleh, she removes the garments that she was captured in, because the Goyish girls, when they would go out to war, they would dress up the girls nicely in order to try to seduce the enemy, and that way they could kill them. V'yashva b'veisecha, then she sits in your house. Uvachasa es avia v'esimea yerach yamin, she mourns for her parents who you've killed in war for a month. V'achar kein tavo eleh uve'alta, then you may live with her. V'haisa l'chalisha, she should become a wife. She becomes a wife for you. V'haya im lo chafatz ba, and if you don't desire her after this 30-day period, v'shilachta lenafsha, you send her off. Umachar lo sim karena b'kesef, you're not allowed to sell her as a slave, which normally you would be allowed to do with a captured woman. You're not allowed to sell this woman. Lo sis amir ba tachas asher idisa, you are not allowed to, how does he translate this? You're not allowed to sell her for money because you have put her through this trauma. Tachas asher idisa. So you have over here a very, very peculiar mitzvah, that the Jewish men go to war, and if you stop and think about it, who went to war for the Jewish men? It was only the tzaddikim, because we learned in the previous Parsha that anybody who was worried that he had sinned, anybody who's worried that he sinned is excused from the battlefront, because he's worried that if he goes out to war with some sort of avera hovering over him, so that may create some sort of divine prosecution against him and put him in a vulnerable situation, may get killed. So only tzaddikim went out to war for the Jewish people. How do you like that? So these tzaddikim go to war. Then one of these tzaddikim sees a woman that he is interested in, non-Jewish woman, and he's allowed to bring her home, put her through this process where she becomes unattractive. She shaves her head and grows her fingernails, and she wears rags for 30 days. And then after 30 days, if he wants to marry her, he's allowed to marry her. And it's a conversion of sorts. She goes through she agrees to convert. And if after 30 days somehow his infatuation has dissipated, because he's seen her without makeup, so then so then he sends her off. And or if she refuses to convert. If she refuses to convert, I think it's a 12-month period. That's what the Torah describes on the surface level. Now let's go back and see what's happening here. Seitzei la milchama aloivecha, says Rashi. Bil milchemes rishus hakosav medaber. It's talking about an optional war. It's not talking about a war that was a mitzvah for the Jewish people, for example, to kill the inhabitants of the land. They had certain wars that were called milchemes rishus. It's an optional war where you want to broaden the borders of the land of Israel. And you go out to war. You don't have to fight that war, but they had that option. And when you go to war, the enemies could surrender or they could fight. In the old days, there was a rule. If you surrender, we take you as slaves. If you fight, we kill you and take the remnants as slaves. Well, there was no negotiating. It was like, yeah, let's make a peace agreement. Let's go to the United Nations and pressure Israel to make concessions. There's no such thing. War ended when somebody got killed. War ended when somebody won. That's how war ended. It ended with a victory for somebody. So the Jewish people go off to this Milchemes Rishus, and he sees this woman. Now, intermarriage, taking a shiksa? I mean, it's not. You're not even allowed to eat. You're not even allowed to eat something with a questionable hechsher. And here you're taking this guy. She has a shiksa. You got to take her home and convert her because you're infatuated with her. It doesn't sound kind of strange, doesn't it? I mean, a Torah that says that a lulav's got to be a certain size and a certain shape, and all of a sudden here, with everything, what you're allowed to do, what you're allowed to not allowed to do, and all of a sudden, hey, well, she's a shiksa. All right, well, under certain circumstances, you could marry her. What's going on here? So take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, "V'lakachta lecha leisha." It's the fourth line of Rashi. Says Rashi, "Los dibra Torah." Everybody see that fourth line of Rashi, right, Colin? Lo dibra Torah ela kedeged yetzer hara. The Torah is speaking here to offset the evil inclination. She'imena kodesh baruch hu. Now listen, it's one of the strangest statements you're ever going to hear in a Rashi. She'imena kodesh baruch hu matira. If Hashem doesn't make her permissible, yisa'ena be'isr. He'll marry her in a prohibited way. That's great. That's great. You go to a rabbi and you say to the rabbi, hey, is this meat kosher or treif? And by the way, if you tell me it's treif, I'm going to eat it anyway. Okay, it's kosher. That's great. That's my kind of rabbi. That's my kind of shiloh. Now we're talking. Now we're talking. Yeah, I'm from. Now I'll be from. Hey, what does it take? So Torah said, look at those words. If Hashem doesn't make her permissible, he's going to marry her in a prohibited way. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Avoli nisa, but if he does marry her, sofo liyos, and in the end he's going to hate her. In the end he's going to hate her. That's the next section. The very next pasuk says, when a man has two wives, one he loves and one he hates. And who are the two wives? The first wife is the Beis Yaakov girl who he married. And the second wife that he hates is this one that he picked up in a war. Okay? So what's going on here? The whole thing is, what a bizarre, what's going on? The answer is the mindset of a man who goes off to war. A man goes off to war, you're in a completely different mindset. Last Parsha, the Torah says when you lay siege to a city, and eventually you go, don't go wantonly chopping down trees. Is a tree a human being? Is a tree a human being? So when you go to war, be careful, don't chop down any trees. For no reason. Why is the Torah telling you that? Why does the Torah tell you that? Don't go chopping down any trees. Even more than that. Look later on in the Parsha. Look later on in the Parsha. This is extremely strange. On page 1054. Page 1054, 5 lines from the bottom. Ki Seitzei machane aloivecha. I made a bracha before. Ki Seitzei machane aloivecha. When you go out to war against your enemies, v'nishmarta mikol davara. Be careful of anything not inappropriate. And then, top of page 1056. The Torah tells you to avoid impurity. Then on top of page 1056. First line. Now you're going off to war, gentlemen. V'yad tiyeh lecha mechutz hamachane. You should have a specified place, a designated place outside of the camp. V'yatzasa shamachutz. And that's when you have to relieve yourself. That's where you should go. You're surrounding the enemy. You're laying siege, and you have your camp, your military camp. But you got to relieve yourself. So you should have a specific location outside the camp. And among your military weapons, your equipment, you should have a shovel. When you go outside of the camp, dig with the shovel, and then cover over what you do. How quaint. We're going off to war. I mean, I could just see, where they finally military line up. They have all their equipment. They do the final check. So there's the equipment check. Okay, machine gun, check. Hand grenades, check. What do you call handheld rocket launcher? Check. Shovel for the poopy? Check. Right? Now we're ready to go to war. Right? I guarantee you that when the Iraqis invaded Saudi Arabia, nobody there had a shovel. It wasn't, come on, be considerate of the next customer, shovel it over, dig it up, shovel it over, cover it up. What's going on here? That's why you got to go to war, and that's what you got to be thinking about when you're going off to war. And you can't chop down any trees. We're in a war, man. I got bigger concerns over here. None of the Russians who have invaded Ukraine, they didn't bring, I'm sure they didn't bring portable latrines with them. So what's going on? The answer is when a man goes off to war, you're in a completely different state. It's a state of kill or be killed. And you turn into some sort of almost subhuman. You did not want to be, when the Russians invaded Berlin at the end of World War II, you didn't want to be in Berlin, that I can tell you. You didn't want to be a man in Berlin, and you certainly didn't want to be a woman in Berlin when the Russians invaded. It wasn't like, let's knock on the door before we enter. There was you're absolute savages, absolute savages. The Torah is telling you there's a danger when you go to war. And when you go to war, you have to guard your humanity. You're a human being. And I'm going to give you a reminder. Just because you're chopping things, you're chopping people and stabbing people, don't go chopping down trees. Don't go chop. What are you chopping a tree for? It shouldn't do anything to you. What are you knocking down a tree for? It's a perfectly good tree. Because you're just in a state of, kill, go chop that? No. And not only that, you're going to have to relieve yourself every few hours. When you relieve yourself every few hours, take a shovel. It'll be a reminder to you that you're a human being. And it's a counter effect, a counterbalance to this state of animal state that a person is easily in when he's in a war. So the Torah comes along and says, listen, there are certain times, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, only Hashem knows. Hashem created us. He knows what can realistically be expected of us. A man who goes to war and sees a woman at war who he's attracted to, there's going to be one of two things. Either she becomes permissible to him, or she remains forbidden and he's going to do it anyway. Those are the two choices. There is no third choice, which is control yourself. Because as a human being, I can't expect that. Guess what God says? As a human being, I know your limitations. And this goes beyond your limitations. So what does the Torah do? The Torah says, you know what? She's going to become permissible. Once something is permissible, the pasuk says, Ma'im genuvim imtaku. The stolen waters are sweet. The stolen waters are sweet. Anything that I told you when you ate the potato chips in class, which you weren't supposed to eat, nothing was as delectable because that you weren't supposed to do. And the minute you walked out of the classroom, it didn't taste as good. And as soon as something happened in class where you weren't supposed to laugh, it was hysterical. And you can't control the laughter until you walk out of the room, and also it's not so funny anymore. That's because the stolen waters are sweet. So the Torah comes along and says, okay, we got two choices. You know what? I'm going to make her not stolen waters. You know what? She's permissible. That takes some of the urgency out. She's permissible to you. But we have some conditions. What are the conditions? Take her home. She got to shave her head. She got to grow her fingernails. And she's wearing just the same garment for 30 days. Ooh. If after 30 days of seeing her every time, and she sits right where you see her when you walk in and out of the house. And the Torah says one of the reasons is that why should the Jewish woman suffer? You should come into your house and see your wife. Hey, you walk in out, hi honey, hi Baldy. And when you come into and you do that for 30 days. And if after 30 days you still want to marry, you can marry her, but I'm telling you it's not a good idea. I'm telling you it's not a good idea. And I saw one of the commentaries says it's comparable to a doctor who says to a patient, if you eat that stuff, it's not going to be good for you. Not good for you. It's very bad for you to eat that stuff. The guy says, well, how about a little bit? A little bit's not going to hurt you, but it's not good for you. Then the guy eats it, and he doesn't feel well. From the little bit that he eats, he doesn't feel well. So he realizes, well, if the doctor knows what he's talking about. So Kodesh Baruch Hu is telling you, I'm telling you this is not good for you. You want to do it, but you're going to end up hating her. And that becomes a lesson to us that all other areas where the Torah says don't do it, the Torah knows what it's talking about. Torah knows what it's talking about. Trust me. I know that you shouldn't do it, but it looks so good. It's not good for you. Don't eat pork, but it tastes good. A lot of people in the world eat pork. It'll contaminate your soul. Trust me, I know. You want to do it, but I'm telling you it's not. But there we don't have an option. There, the Torah never says, well, since I made it prohibited, if you're going to do it anyway, so I'll make it permissible. Only one time we find. So sometimes people think, hey, this is good news. This isn't good news, gentlemen. This isn't good news at all. You know why? Because if we don't find it anywhere else, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? Here, Hashem says, it's beyond your capability. If we don't find it anywhere else, then what? That means it's not beyond our capability. The Torah said, don't eat pork, but I love pork. Well, you did. Now you're from. Yeah, but, I get nervous when I don't eat pork. We have medication for that. But you can't eat pork. There is no heter whatsoever. That's what the Chafetz Chaim says we learn from here. Because if it would be beyond our capabilities, the Torah would permit it. How do we know? Because here the Torah permits it. Here because the Torah says beyond your capability. I had a friend once when I was in high school. I had a friend who, strangely enough, among modern Orthodox kids, this guy was meticulously careful not to speak Lashon Hara. For the rest of us, the laws didn't apply. And this guy was meticulously careful not to speak Lashon Hara. He had a very strong willpower. And he didn't speak. He was for us, a guy, who even thought about these things? I saw him about 20 years later. After I finished high school, I saw him about 20 years later. And this guy was a principal of a school. And we hadn't seen him in about 20 years. He started talking about people left, right, and center, and I said to him, You were Mr. Joe Chafetz Chaim. I mean, what happened? He says it's not realistic once you're out in the work world to abide by these laws. That's what he said to me. Chafetz Chaim disagrees. Chafetz Chaim says if it was permissive, if it would be not realistic, the Torah would say, oh yeah, when you're doing this, then the laws of Lashon Hara don't apply. Doesn't say that. And that means that every other area of Torah, there's no excuse. That's the first thing it's teaching us. I had my son, who was about 6 years old, my oldest son. This is one of those daddy moments. Victory for daddy. So it was a Friday night, and for some reason, somebody had given me a bottle of beer. I don't like beer. And somebody gave me I had a bottle of beer in the refrigerator. So one Shabbos, I opened up the bottle of beer. I said, I'll have some beer. I poured myself the beer. So my son is 6 years old. He says, I want some. It looks good. It's got foam. It kind of looks like pop. So he says to me, I want some. I said, no, you're not going to like it. He said, I'll like it. So I said, no, you're all right. So I poured him some beer. The look on his face, he takes the beer, and he goes like this. And he looks at me, and you could tell in his eyes, it's like, oh, this is horrible. Oh, you got me. You got it. That was one of those daddy moments. You live for that. You live for that. Now, kid, trust me next time. I don't think he's had a beer since. It's terrible. It tastes horrible. So if I tell you that it's no good, it's no good. And that's what the Kodesh Baruch Hu says over here. If I tell you it's no good, it's no good. So the Torah says, you know what? You're going to make her unattractive. You still want her. You still want to marry her. Then you could go ahead and marry her. But I'm telling you, it's a bad idea. Because then you're going to hate her. And then the next section is going to have a rebellious son that comes from her. That's what the Torah says. Now, I'll tell you a deeper Kabbalistic level idea. You can't ask me any questions about this, because I'm only quoting the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, and I'm just telling you a concept. So you can't ask me any kashas. The Orach Chaim says what's really going on here is there are certain, at the time of the original sin of Adam Harishon, certain neshamas were captured by the forces, what's called the Sitra Achra, right? The spiritual forces of evil, the Death Eaters, right? They captured certain neshamas. These are the neshamas that eventually will convert into the Jewish people down the line. The name of this neshama, the neshama has a name. It's called a Yefas Toar. That's the name of this neshama. It's called a Yefas Toar. So the Torah says you'll see an Eshes Yefas Toar. So the Ohr Chaim says, you know what this beautiful woman means? What it really means is referring to a neshama. So a man goes off to war, and he sees a beautiful woman, and these are tzaddikim. What's he really seeing? He's seeing her beautiful neshama. There's only one problem. When a beautiful neshama is wrapped in a beautiful body, you may be convincing yourself you're seeing a beautiful neshama. But at the end of the day, you may not be the beautiful neshama. It's like when they tell you, they set you up with a girl and say, well, she's got a really nice personality. Careful. Right? She's got a nice personality. Yeah, well, the nice personality is going to get nicer depending on how good looking she is. And suddenly her nice personality, if she's very attractive, then she's got a really nice personality. And when you're sitting with her at the table, and all of a sudden an ant crawls across the table and this girl goes like that. And if she's good looking, you say, wow, she's got a sense of humor too. Because you're completely biased. So the Torah says, careful. You're going off to war, and you're looking for your fast start. Oh, there's a holy neshama over there. There's a holy neshama over there. Yeah, what's she doing in a bar if she's such a holy neshama? There's a holy neshama. Okay, you may be right. You're probably right. But we'll put you to the acid test. You know what the acid test is? Take her home for a month. Now she's unattractive. Are you still interested in marrying her? Then you saw the holy neshama. You're not interested, that means you were deceived. You were deceived. That's what the Ohr Chaim Kodesh says Cabalistically. How it fits with the rest of it is problematic, because the rest of it says you shouldn't marry her and so on and so forth. But that's why I say you can't ask me any questions. That's what the Ohr Chaim says. Okay. More than that. Take a look at that first Rashi again. Take a look at the first pasuk. Ki Seitzei le'melchama aloivecha. When you go to war on your enemy. Gentlemen, who is the ultimate enemy? The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. We're talking about going to war with the ultimate war. How do you fight this battle? It's a battle that we fight all day, every day. And by the way, the Yetzer Hara, you ever notice? He davens nates. He's always up when I wake up. Isn't that amazing? He never sleeps. I get up in the morning, and he's already up telling me sleep some more. How do you like that? I don't know where to hate this guy. I mean, he's there all the time. So when you go to war with your enemy, what's the first step? You have to go to war with the enemy. Take the first step. Make an effort to go and defeat him. Then you know what's going to happen? Unisano Hashem elokecha biyadecha. Then Hashem will deliver him in your hands. You need siyata dishmaya. We need siyata dishmaya to overcome the Yetzer Hara. You can't expect to overcome the Yetzer Hara and have Hashem do all the work for you. Ki Seitzei lemecha. We've got to fight. In spite of the fact that we fight, we're still helpless. But if we at least make the effort to fight, then Hashem will deliver him in our hands. But we got to take the first step. We got to make the effort. We got to fight. Then he says, Vishavisa shivyo, and you take captives. Now what is it? It's a profound idea here. It's a profound idea. What does it mean to take a captive? Take a captive means if you try to do too much, you're going to lose. Take captives of the Yetzer Hara. A little bit each day. A little bit each day. There's a problem when people try to take on too much in Yiddishkeit. You're not holding there yet. That itself is a Yetzer Hara. To tell you, yeah, do more. Push yourself harder. Do more. Take on more. It's beyond your capability. We get depressed. We fail, and then we throw the whole thing away. Vishavisa shivyo. Take a little bit at a time. Take the captives. Take the Yetzer Hara. One step at a time. Defeat him one step at a time. And the whole thing is a battle. It's a battle against the Yetzer Hara. Okay. By the way, if I saw an intriguing shot, take a look in. This is also very insight into human nature. On the second line, where it says "Verisa b'shivya eshes yefas toar." Now, eshes yefas toar means she could even be a married woman. There's no adultery when it comes to the non-Jews. Whether she's single or married makes no difference to you. If he takes them, even if she's married, It's a what do you call it? It's permissible under the circumstances. But I saw an intriguing shot. An ashes is a creature. You know what creature it is? An ashes is the Hebrew word for a bat. A bat. Why is she called an ashes Yeshivat Ohr? Okay, she's a wife, a woman, ashes Yeshivat, but it's the same word. Ashes and a bat is the same thing. I love Batman, by the way. I grew up with Batman. I love Batman. I thought the original on TV. Ooh, Batman was it. And in Superman, schwach. Because nothing could happen to him on some green kryptonite where they ever find that stuff. You know, I mean, he was too. Batman was already a challenge. So here's a bat. Let me ask you a question. You ever seen a bat? The bat an attractive creature? I mean, ranking animals. You know, sometimes you see a bird, you say, well, that's a beautiful bird. You know, like a swan. You know, oh, that's a beautiful bird. You know, a swan. Sometimes you see a hippopotamus. A rhino, a hippopotamus, like, ooh, boy. You know, ooh, boy. You know, sometimes you just wonder how they make their shidduchim by hippopotamuses. I mean, they're just like, oh, well, I guess somebody thinks he's handsome, you know. but what do you call you take a look, some creatures are just like beautiful, some are just like, ugh. Yeah, you're like, ugh. A bat is not a particularly attractive creature. So I saw one of them says, look what's happening. She's an ashes Yeshivat Ohr. She could be ugly as a bat, and you still want her. Why? Because she's off limits. And that's how the Torah counteracts the Yetzer Hara. As soon as it becomes permissible, somebody once said they found the cure for romance. They found a food that cures romance. You know what it's called? Wedding cake. Think about that. Think about that. That means once it's off limits, I'll tell you an amazing Gemara. There's an amazing Gemara. There's a guy, the Gemara at the end of, I think it's at the end of Nedarim. So the Gemara says, there's an adulterer, and he's penetrated into the house. The adulterer is in the house with the wife. And all of a sudden the husband comes home. And the adulterer jumps into the closet. So the husband comes in, and the husband is about to eat something. And the adulterer yells out of the closet, don't eat that stuff, a snake got to it, it's poison. It's poison. So the question becomes, is this woman considered, now what? Do we assume that they've done the Avera and she's forbidden to her husband, or not? So the Gemara says, we could assume they haven't done the Avera. Why not? Because if they've done the Avera, the guy wants the girl, he will let the husband die. The fact that he's telling the husband not to eat it, that means he hasn't done the Avera yet. So the Gemara says. And what was the Havamina? Why would you think that he wants the husband to stay alive if he's done the Avera? So the Gemara says, you might have thought that he wants the husband to be alive, because if the husband is still alive, the wife becomes more attractive to him. Because then it's the stolen waters are sweet. Ma'im geduvim im taku. It's actually a havamina in the Gemara. That this adulterer has committed the Avera, but he wants the woman to be married. Because she's a married woman, she's more attractive to him. Why? Because the stolen waters are sweet. So the Gemara says, no. If the adulterer doesn't know that, the adulterer just thinks he's attracted. If he really wanted, if he really did the Avera, so he would have had the husband die. Therefore, we can rely on the fact that he has. That's what the Gemara says. But the psychological factor of the stolen waters are sweet is such a powerful psychological factor. The Gemara actually entertains that as a Havamina. And therefore, the Torah says over here, you know what, I'll make her permissible. Once it's permissible, the intrigue is released. Then maybe you'll stand a chance and you won't want. And if that doesn't help, so I'll make her unattractive. One more point. Look at the first Rashi. Ki Seitzei la milcha, and then one more point on this pasuk. Ki Seitzei la milchama b'milchemes harishus hakosav b'dabir. It's talking about a battle of rishus. So I told you that a battle of rishus means what we call an optional war. But at a deeper level, the commentaries say milchemes harishus goes back to what we said, that the entire theme is how to battle the evil inclination. There are two areas where we have to battle, gentlemen. There's one area where it's prohibitions. You're not allowed to eat it. It's meat and milk. It's shatnez. You can't wear it. It's treif. It's chazer. You can't eat it. There's something else called rishus. Rishus means that it's permissible. It's perfectly kosher. It's perfectly good. It's kosher. That's the area where the battle begins. That means people make a mistake. Do you see 613 mitzvahs? Or do you see 613 problems? We've gotten around the problem of meat and milk. Now you can have a cheeseburger, a kosher cheeseburger, two different ways. You could have real meat with parva cheese, and you could have soy meat with milchik cheese. Baruch Hashem, we've taken care of the problem of meat and milk. We've taken care of the problem of women covering their hair. Now you got shaitels that look like, what do you call it? They look like she's a punk rock star, right? But at least her hair is covered. Good, we got past the problem of shaitels. Good, took care of that problem. They've got the mechitza and shul. They've got this two-way mirror now that you are seeing, but you're not really seeing. And you outside think, Baruch Hashem, we took care of the problem of the mechitzas. We got all these problems that we've taken care of. That's one attitude. The attitude that the Torah is an obstacle course, and all we got to do is get through maximize our pleasure in a permissible way. That's what the commentators call a novel birshus HaTorah. He's a glutton with Torah sanction. That's milchemes harishus. Milchemes harishus means if we are able to control ourselves in the permissible areas, just because it's available doesn't mean we have to indulge. And if we're able to control ourselves in the permissible areas, then certainly we'll be able to control ourselves in the forbidden areas. Milchemes harishus, that's where the battle doesn't start at the line where it's treif kosher. The battle starts in the area where it's all kosher. And when it's all kosher in any area of life, how much self-control are we able to exert there? And if we control it, that's the milchemes harishus against the Yetzer Hara. That's the milchemes. Yes, I'm going to take a Shabbos nap. You should take a Shabbos nap. One should sleep on Shabbos. It's a good thing to sleep Shabbos. But there's a difference between taking a nap and becoming comatose. Right? A Shabbos nap is 2 hours, 3 hours, 3.5 hours. 9 hours is not a nap. 9 hours is a drug-induced slumber. I'm sleeping. I'm taking a Shabbos nap. I'll see you Tuesday. Right? No. That's not a nap. That's kidnapped. That's not a nap. So you should eat chont, and you should enjoy your chont. A second helping, even a third helping. 9, that's beyond the limit already. That's the milchemes harishus. The milchemes harishus means that even in permissible areas, a person has to try to exert a certain amount of self-control. Then for sure, when it gets to the forbidden areas, then for sure it won't even be a challenge. I once pointed out, are Jews allowed to hit each other? You allowed to hit a Jew? What does the Torah call you if you hit a Jew? You're a Russia. Moshe Rabbeinu said to Dasan and Aviram, Russia, just raising your fist, he hasn't even hit him yet. Could you imagine? Not only we're not allowed to hit, we're not even to say not nice things to each other. Not only we're not allowed to say it's called onoas dvarim. You're not allowed to torment people verbally. And not only you're not allowed to insult people, you're not able to think bad about other people. Now imagine, a person who's not thinking bad about other people. Every time I think something negative, I think, you know what, I really should judge them favorably. And I'm trying to force myself to see the positive in everybody. What's the likelihood that I'm going to get to the point where I actually slug somebody? I'm so far removed from that. That I'm working on not thinking. That's what the Torah is doing. You're not thinking. Can you imagine saying, go in People Magazine? Imagine People Magazine. You know what People Magazine is, I'm assuming. But you're not allowed to say anything bad about people or their private life. Close that magazine. Close the New York Times. Close all magazines. What do you call it? Soap operas. Not allowed to talk about people. That's all they do. The doctor and the nurse in the hospital on the soap operas. All they're doing is talking about people. I mean, this guy's dying on the table, and they're talking about, but Claire said. What my father used to always say, when the women would watch the soap operas, my father always said, he would look at it for a second, he'd go, don't these people ever work? All they do is talk about other people. And that's perfectly acceptable in the non-Jewish world. In our world, you can't even think bad about people. So you're never going to get to the point where you're going to hit somebody. It's going to be rare that you're going to hit somebody. That's what the Torah is doing. Milchemes harishus. The Torah is telling you, here's safeguards for you. It's a safeguard. It's going to keep you away. Maybe you'll succeed. Maybe you won't. Look what the next section. He has two wives now. One of them he loves and one he hates. And now they both bear children. And guess what? Guess who's going to have the first one? Isn't it always the way it works in life? Oh, darn it. Who has the firstborn son? Dafka, the wife who he hates. Oh, now the man's ready to die. And he's got to give up. He's got to start bequeathing his fortune. So what do you think he wants to do? What do you think he wants to do? Kill her? She's too late. She already gave. He wants it to go to the beloved son. Says the Torah, lo yuchal. You cannot bypass the hated son in favor of the beloved son. The older son gets a double portion. When a man dies, the Torah, the halacha is that the oldest son, the Bechor, gets a double portion. The Bechor gets a double portion. What's really remarkable about this is, look at the word Bechor. Look at the word Bechor. Ha-Bechor, Livakir, Bechor. 4 lines from the bottom, Ha-Bechor. The Hey is just a prefix, but the word Bechor is a Beis Chaf Reish. What's the letter in the Aleph Beis that comes before a Beis? Aleph. The Beis is exactly 2 times the Aleph. What's the letter that comes before a Chaf? A Yud. A Yud is 10, a Chaf is 20. The Chaf is exactly twice the Yud. The Reish, what's the letter in the Aleph Beis before a Reish? Is a Kuf. Kuf is 100, a Reish is 200. Each letter in the word Bechor is exactly twice the previous letter in the Aleph Beis. That's the essence of the Bechor. He gets a double portion. And what that means is that if a man has 5 sons, it's divided into 6 portions. And the Bechor he doesn't get double everybody. He gets double of what any of the other individuals get. So if there are 5 portions, 5 sons divided into 6, he gets 2 of the 6. He gets a double, that's a double portion for the Bechor. That's what the Torah is telling you is going to happen. You messed up, you went against my advice, now you're going to end up, what's that, what's the question?
If my brother is technically not the firstborn, does he still get
No. If there's a sister before him, no. No, but if he's the firstborn, then yes. Sisters do not get any of the, by Torah law, a sister does not get any of the money. And this also makes sense, by the way. This is nothing against girls, nothing against women. It makes sense because what's going to happen? She's going to get married, somebody's going to support her. All right, nowadays women work, but but she has a choice. A woman who comes home one day and says to her husband, I got some good news and some bad news. The good news is you're going to be seeing more of me. The bad news is I quit my job. The husband's thinking, I'm not sure which is the good news, which is the bad news. I said, okay, we'll talk about that later. Why? She has no obligation to support the husband. If a woman is working, she's doing her husband a favor. A man who comes home and says, I'm not supporting you, in the time where there's Beis Din could force him physically to go back to work. You give her a ksuba. There's grounds for divorce. A man, you have to support your wife. That's a ksuba. You give your wife a ksuba. Gentlemen, when you get married, you give your wife a ksuba. What do you think it says in there? What do you think, it's a bunch of romance? Wrong. It's a contract. It's a financial, that's why people take their ksuba and they put flowers around it and put it up on the wall. It's like putting your mortgage document with flowers on it on the wall. You have very little romance in a ksuba. It's what happens in case of death and divorce. And I got to support you and I got to... No romance. And it goes up on the wall. They put it on a dartboard. That's what they should do with it. So put a bullseye on it. Okay, too bad. We told you not to marry her. You married her. Now you got even a bigger problem because now she had the firstborn son. which we knew, which is predictable. We knew something like that would happen. All right, we'll see tomorrow what the continuation is.